I say pan goofy, this is what I mean.
Dealing with what's beautiful about family is when you establish your connection to your nation, the rest of your family does not have to agree. That's their opinion. But guess what? They still a part of it. Because it's a blood tie. I don't need nobody in my family to agree with me. They could completely disagree with me. But when I sit down with the chiefs that I sit down with, and I tell them my family names, and they're like, oh, you family. It's a wrap. It don't matter what the federal government says, what the state says. It don't matter what some pseudo dudes in Harlem say. It don't matter what none of these people say.
That's right.
When these chiefs, when these people who we give authority to, right? When I say we, I'm saying we all are a part of a nation, right? Part of a clan, part of a family, right? Your grandmother has authority over you, but if you don't give it to her, she has no, you know what I'm saying? Like, we all are our own individuals. So when you go to grandma's house, like, you could very easily go there and be disrespectful and uncooperative, and boom, your grandmother has nothing over you. You know what I'm saying? Like, because this is not a physical thing. You know what I mean? This is dealing with respect, right? So when I sit with people and I give them jurisdiction over me, it's based on lineage and heritage. But if I don't want to, I don't have to adhere to none of that. But it doesn't change who I am. So the people in our family that don't agree, it don't matter. You know, this is like, and I'm not trying to go biblical on people, but that's what the story of Noah was about. Build the ark. You know what I mean? Like, when them floods hit, they all gonna want to jump, all gonna want to ride. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not a biblical person. I'm not gonna sit up here and come out the Bible, but I know what that story represents.
That's
right.
You know what I'm saying? That's right. Well, thank you so much for calling.
Dynastic people. We just developed on our own over here. How come when an Italian be like, I'm Italian, motherfuckers be like, no, you ain't, you African. Take a DNA test. If we all from Africa, why you don't say that to him? You feel me? Why you don't say that to the Greek man? Why you tell the Arab he ain't African? Why you tell the Neanderthal he ain't African? We all came out of Africa.
The first migrations that came to the American continent were short-statured African people known as the Paleo-Americans, or who we call the Twa in Boutique.
It's the Twa people, it's the Pygmy people, it's the magical people. Those people migrated here to the Americas first. And they came through Greenland. That's why when you go through Europe, you're going to find mound-building people. All those tribes in Europe that are mound-building people, all through Ireland and all that shit, all those people live with the Twa. Right? Twa talk. Twa came through Greenland, came through North America, down into South America, and left behind what we call the Mayan calendar. When you look at the center of the Mayan calendar, you're going to see bats. Alright? So our connection with Kemet came before Kemet existed. We are pre-dynastic people.
The second were who we call a taller stature African, known as the Clovis folks. The third migration coming to this country were known as the Algonquin.
We're a product of the people that migrated out of Africa thousands and thousands and thousands of years before modern history.
The Algonquin.
We walked the entire planet and ended up all the way on the East Coast, and we couldn't go no more. So we settled in Lenape-Hokan. And that's who my people are.
The fourth are known as the Inuit, or who are derogatorily called the Eskimo. Eskimo is a derogatory term towards the indigenous people that we call the Inuit. The fifth migration came in large numbers, and they were escaping the Mongol invasions like Genghis Khan. And they came across. That's who we give credit for the Bering Strait. The first Africans that came to America came from Africa.
We know why we are where we are. We know our migration stories. We know where they lead us back to.
The first Africans that came to America came from Africa to America.
You want to say Africans came here? When they came here, they called themselves the Lenape. Now, for those of you out there that don't know where the fuck you come from, listen to my black ass. Because whoever's out there, you were black. Like me. Black. This ain't got nothing to do with race. Well, it does, but you were black.
at one fucking time in history. So, for those of you that don't know, everybody on this fucking earth came from fucking Africa.
In Persia.
Because his ancestor, they said Lebu is came from India.
3 clans left the Kaaba from Saudi Arabia.
So, for those of you that don't know, everybody on this fucking earth came from fucking Africa.
An internet psyop taking advantage of undereducated African Americans called the FBA movement. FBA stands for Fear of Being African, I think, and it's causing a sect of African Americans who didn't graduate high school for the most part to grab onto certain catchphrases and hot terms to disparage African people and distance themselves from their own African ancestry. They claim they've always been in America, and the Native Americans are really the ones who came over to America. Like, it's the dumbest shit I ever heard. Something I noticed about these people online is that they all, every single one of their accounts, look a lot like bot accounts. And the ones that aren't bot accounts, you can tell by their profiles that these are losers.
And we happen to be in America. We're not Americans. We are people who formerly were Africans who were kidnapped and brought to America.
Biography on Book TV. The Messenger, The Rise and Fall of Elijah Muhammad, is a biography of the Nation of Islam co-founder. Author Carl Evans goes back in time to Elijah Muhammad's family history during slavery and Reconstruction, to Elijah Muhammad's own birth in 1897. And then he looks at the influences Elijah Muhammad had on civil rights leaders such as Martin Luther King Jr., Muhammad Ali, Jesse Jackson, and the Black Panthers, and his relationship with Malcolm X. Mr. Evans spoke about his book for a little over an hour at Afrocentric Books in Chicago.
Celebration by the Muslims of the birth date of Wallace D. Fard. Also, at the same time, though, the FBI becomes concerned about the growing power of the Nation of Islam. They said this fellow Malcolm X is someone that we have to watch closely. And they said Elijah Muhammad, as his instructor and leader, needs to be watched as well. And so they began something called a counterintelligence program against the Nation of Islam. This document, dated December 31st, New Year's Eve, 1956, is called a June Mill document, which you see highlighted here, J-U-N-E. Basically, this was the FBI's request to the federal government, to the Justice Department, for permission to wiretap the phones in Elijah Muhammad's home and to install bugs in Elijah Muhammad's house so they could monitor the growth and the activities of the Nation of Islam. Not knowing this was going on, Malcolm continued to reach out to national civil rights leaders such as Dr. King and to international leaders. And among those he met and among those who supported him was King Faisal of Saudi Arabia and Gamal Nasser of Egypt. They actually considered at one point of financing the Nation of Islam because they were under the impression that the Nation of Islam was not just a sect in America, but an entity, an independent state that was near America, much like Japan is near China. As part of this counterintelligence program against the Nation of Islam, the FBI went back and began to look closely at Wallace D. Fard's background. And what they found astounded them. They found, by comparing Wallace D. Fard's fingerprints, that he was actually a petty criminal from Los Angeles named Wallace Dodd Ford. They also found out that he had been married and lived with a white woman named Hazel Ford, and that he was identified on his marriage certificate as a white man. They also found the birth certificate of Wallace D. Ford's first child, who was called Wallace Dodd Ford Jr. This was later changed to Wallace Max Ford after his wife realized that he was connected to the Nation of Islam. This is a 1926 photograph of Wallace D. Ford on the way to San Quentin prison with his best friend, Eugene Donaldson. And again, for anyone who questions my veracity here. This is all on the web at FBI.gov. Just type in Wallace D. Fard. They also found out about his parentage. Wallace D. Fard's parents were from New Zealand. They were of the Maori tribe, which, as you know, was a jet black tribe that had come down from India and resettled. His father was a black man, a Muslim by birth, and his name was Zaret Ford, or Zaret Fard initially. His mother, however, was a Jewess, as they called him then, a Jewish woman by birth, who later was converted to Islam by her husband. But again, his mother was white, which is one of the more astounding facts about the Nation of Islam, I think. He began, Elijah Muhammad was outraged, and he said it was a lie. And he printed an article in the front page of Muhammad Speaks, offering anyone who could prove that Wallace D. Fard was Wallace D. Ford. He said, I'll give you $100,000. What happened is Hazel Ford heard about the reward, went to the messenger and mailed various documents to him, showing beyond any doubt that she was married to Wallace D. Ford, a.k.a. Wallace D. Farad, or Wallace D. Fard, as some say. Nevertheless, the campaign failed. Elijah Muhammad refused to pay Wallace D. Fard's wife the money because she said the fingerprints that I just showed you were doctored by the FBI. She went home empty-handed. But this is early January 1957, and the FBI is beginning to reap the rewards of its wiretaps on Elijah Muhammad. They find out that he's living in an apartment which is visited by several of his young secretaries. And not only that, they find out that his wife is suspicious of the activities of her husband, and she thinks he's having affairs, which turns out to be true. They tape conversations where she's talking about leaving Elijah Muhammad over his infidelity. They also find out that Malcolm X has become the most powerful man in the Nation of Islam, and that Elijah Muhammad's children and his top ministers are jealous, and that they want to move Malcolm X out of the picture. Finally, they find out that the women that Elijah Muhammad has been engaged with have borne children by him, and that some of these women are angry about the way they've been treated, and they file a lawsuit. One of the first lawsuits was filed in in the summer of 1963 by Lucille Rosary, one of Elijah Muhammad's personal secretaries. And I wondered how much members of the Nation of Islam really knew about his origins. And I found out by interviewing Muslims that none of them knew where Shabazz was. They had heard about this great nation of the Shabazz all their lives, and none of them had ever asked where Shabazz was. I also wondered why Elijah Muhammad was preaching that Wallace D. Fard was God when the initial papers clearly showed that Fard never condoned teaching that he was God. And so I began to investigate. And what I found out was that Shabazz actually exists. It exists today. It is in Pakistan. And in doing that research, I did some research on the name Kalat, because I couldn't find it in any name book, any dictionary, any encyclopedia. And so I did some research on the web, and I found that Kalat is a very uncommon name. In fact, of 1 million documents in the Washington Post database, I could find no references to Kalat. What I did find out, however, that Kalat was a small town in Pakistan. So again, the fact that Wallace D. Fard named Elijah Muhammad's brother Kalat goes back to his Pakistani roots. And again, the fact that the mosque of Shabazz is located in Pakistan certainly ties Wallace D. Fard to Pakistan. I also did some genealogical research on Wallace D. Fard, and I found out that as the FBI surmised in 1943, that he was in fact living in Los Angeles at the time when he was a young man when he was in his 20s. And as Hazel Ford says, his name was indeed Wally D. Ford, and it's here on the census report, the 14th census report for Los Angeles County. And if you go back and read some of Elijah Muhammad's books, he says very clearly that Wallace D. Farad, the man identified as the Allah, lived with a white family in Los Angeles while he was attending the University of California. Turns out he did not attend the University of California, but he did in fact live with a white family, the Bushings. And the Bushings lived on Bunker Hill, which was a famous community, as you know, in Los Angeles. So again, the historical record documents now beyond any question, and this book contains an entire chapter on my findings, but basically Wallace D. Fard and Wallace D. Ford were one and the same. Now, again, Farrakhan did not know about this, and none of the ministers knew about this. So this is all new, and this will be all new information to many Muslims. What I am hoping is that they do not react negatively. You know, if you find out something that's not true, then you ought not try to kill the messenger. What you ought to try to do is try to correct those mistakes so others don't grow up being ignorant. And when I heard Minister Farrakhan say recently that he had had an epiphany and that he was going to accept all men as brothers and stop teaching race-based Islam, but go into the orthodoxy and teach true Islam, I was filled with hope, because I think Minister Farrakhan has a great deal of potential, not only for the African American community, but for America at large. Because if he could come out of his experience and move to the mainstream, then I think there's hope for many of the white races in this country.
I greet you in the name of the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League of the World. You may ask, what organization is that? It is for me to inform you that the Universal Negro Improvement Association is an organization that seeks to unite into one.
One of the several cast of characters playing a significant role in the early development of Marcus Garvey was Dusay Muhammad Ali. Ali was an Egyptian actor turned activist with a mysterious past and editor of the African Times and Orient Review. Before launching the publication, Dusay Muhammad was best known for his portrayals of Othello and the Prince of Morocco, as well as writing and producing theater company productions across the British Isles. However, questions surrounding the legitimacy of his Egyptian heritage were being floated around aristocratic circles. In response, Ali wrote "In the Land of Pharaohs" as a rebuttal to his haters. His book received international applause in the beginning, but soon it was revealed that he had plagiarized Arab scholars like Wilfrid Blunt without citation. Although these were major hits to his reputation, his overall credibility among Brits sidestepped accusations of fraud. And he soon called to his stage some of the most prominent so-called black writers in the world to be contributors at the Times and Orient Review. Young Marcus, through his persistence, managed to get a foot in the door at the publication. In the beginning, he wasn't a writer, but was hired on as a messenger and handyman. The mere presence of Dusay Muhammad Ali and Garvey's association with the world-renowned academic brought within itself an air of prominence Marcus dearly longed for. The journey across the Atlantic and his long dock days for little pay were starting to collect tangible dividends. While under the mentorship of Dusay Muhammad, Marcus maintained the unwritten role of apprentice, learning the publishing game from the certified professional. This would eventually solidify itself as one of the most laudable aspects of Garvey's talents. Ali, the Egyptian Sudanese national turned Brit, was a self-identified pan-Ethiopianist, a philosophy advocating for the end of British imperial rule in Egypt and Ethiopia. Though the proposed use of the African Times and Orient Review would basically criticize and even oppose British occupation, Dusay cleverly or deceptively solicited support from some of the top elites in London by publishing their private letters supporting his paper, thereby claiming these men were contributing writers during its launch. Finally, after consistent annoyance over the span of months, Garvey was given an opportunity to prove his value as a freelance contributor to Ali. Garvey's will to establish himself among the intellectual elite gave him the enthusiastic energy to face multiple pursuits during his days in the UK, from trying his hand at Speaker's Corner to fanatically following the debates of David Lloyd George, and even enlisting in night classes. The young Marcus put every iron at his disposal into the fire. Now established with employment, Marcus even sent for his sister Indiana by writing a letter to her employer, George Judah, requesting she be allowed to accompany his family on their trip to London. Investigate George Judah. Perhaps Garvey was most influenced during his tour of Europe, where he traveled from Scotland to Paris and from Monte Carlo to Madrid. Most influenced during his tour of Europe, where he traveled from Scotland to Paris and from Monte Carlo to Madrid, with several stops in between. On this tour, he was most pleased at the reception he received from the white Europeans he met along his journey. They looked at him with befuddled interest, many taking him for African royalty. Quote from Negro with the Hat, The Rise and Fall of Marcus Garvey. Quote, on mainland Europe, Garvey ticketed off the great architectural wonders and soon fell in with some of the traveling missionaries, not quite believing his good fortune. He was quietly pleased with the impression he seemed to make along the way. I have seen wonders, he wrote enthusiastically to McCormick. At some places, I have been the only black man seen for a good time. Some of the tourists are wondering how a black man can travel about so much. Some take me for an African millionaire. In subsequent letters, Garvey cited his popularity amongst his aristocratic lady fellow travelers and playfully speculated that he might one day return to Jamaica with a white heiress on his arm. 2 months later, it was apparent that it wasn't just Europe's great architectural sites that caught the young man's attention. On March 2nd, 1914, Marcus Garvey confided bashfully to Alfred Cap Burroughs, I am engaged to a Spanish-Irish heiress whom I had the pleasure of meeting on the continent. Providence had waved her magical hand and an heiress had materialized. He had mused on the fantasy of a union with such a creature. Remarkably, it now seemed a distinct possibility. It was a spectacular volte-face. Love had triumphed over his often stated and violently held belief that any union between blacks and whites was repugnant. It is somewhat destructive of my principle, he conceded. Yet I hardly think I can change my mind marrying her. End quote. But alas, Garvey's hot boy summer in Europe was soon coming to an end. Back in London, after getting a taste of the freelance desk, Marcus's actual job as a handyman messenger became less of a priority, which led to him eventually being relieved of duty from the African Times and Orient Review. Ali complained Marcus was lazy. After this turn of events, his luck all but ran out. Marcus again asked for help from the Anti-Slavery and Aborigines Protection Society. It was finally time to return home. But again, without his sister, who had been stranded in London due to her own financial circumstances. But for his bit, Marcus had to work to pay his 3-week return voyage to Jamaica aboard the SS Trent. While on his passage across the Atlantic, Marcus meets a South African missionary who tells him of the horrors of black mistreatment in Basuto land. It was at this point, or so it is attested, that the young Marcus Garvey came to the vision of an African home state for the so-called African people. And so was born Garvey's Pan African movement. Or was it? Haven't we done this before? All right. Wasn't that like the white thing back in America? I'm not sure if Garvey knew about that. All right, they tried that. Within a few weeks of his return home, Marcus was already in the works for the creation of the United Negro Improvement Association. His ability to compel new recruits to his cause was unparalleled and unmatched, and one of his new recruits was a 17-year-old Amy Ashwood, a young woman from a wealthy, elite Jamaican family. Upon meeting her at a local debate one night, Marcus follows her afterwards to the tram, laid down a bit of that aristocratic talk game, and the teenager was all but putty in his hands. After learning about Marcus and their age difference, Amy's mother was suspicious about the intentions of a grown man with her daughter, who at the time was holding UNIA meetings from his live-in hotel room. In fact, Garvey even called for black Jamaican men to enlist in the military and fight with the Allied powers on the Western Front. Just 2 decades before, General Blackton, general of the Jamaican military, spoke at the UNIA. The British military used Jamaican forces in West Africa during the colonization of West Africa during the first 2 Ashanti Wars. In Garvey's mind, Jamaicans have already proven their loyalty to the empire in the greatest way possible by sacrificing their lives on the battlefield. And although this very same regiment was responsible for murdering Africans, perpetuating British rule in Africa, and Garvey himself was a self-proclaimed Pan Africanist, he was manifestly devoted to the British cause. And in his enthusiasm in supporting the British cause, he may have very well stuck his foot in his mouth. General Blackton had expressed a level of aversion toward Jamaican recruits, advertising his contempt in a string of insults, describing them as a ragtag group of pitiful men, too intellectually incompetent to be of any good use in modern warfare. In his support of the general, Garvey stated in an address at Collegiate Hall, quote, "To the cultured mind, the bulk of our people are contemptible. To go into the country parts of Jamaica, you will see their villainy and vice of the worst kind, immorality, obeah, and all kinds of dirty things. Kingston and its envious are so infested with the uncouthly vulgar of our people that we of the cultured class feel positively ashamed to move about, while this society has set itself to the task to go among the people and raise them to the standard of civilized people," end quote. These were the words that would come back to bite Garvey in his black ass.
Meanwhile, in Pan Goofy land, this is a Pan Africanist. He mixes the dope with capitalism and conservatism and Trump supporter ideology. So let's go into his own constituency with these YT supremacists that's talking crap about him.
No one invited this fat pig to a party. No one offered this fat pig a cigarette. He was probably a nerdy black. He was probably one of those nerds. What is up, folks? We are back again. Nothing much has been going on. I'm eaten up with mosquitoes. Mosquito season is officially upon us. The problem is it rains a lot during this time. This is like hurricane season on the coast, so it fills up all the bogs and the byways and anything hole, the pot left unflipped over, and mosquitoes multiply, and they are truly insane. And this was between iHypocrite. He's on Twitter. He got big on Twitter. I guess he has a show. I've been on his show before. He's cool. He's really laid back. And some black conservative, they're on like that Adam 22's show or whatever. I don't know who that is. All I know is like he's had Nick on before. Who else did he have on? I think he's a cuck. I don't understand what's going on with these guys who are cucks. What is that? What is that? Can someone explain that to me? So anyway, let's jump to that and take a look at some of the highlights of this debate, because it really goes to show how black people, even when they claim to be conservative, are they really though? I don't think a black person can truly be based. Being based is only for white people, because that being based means you're based on race. And if you're based on race as a black person, then you're like self-hating, you know? And frankly, I feel odd. I feel weird around black people who like try to be like white nationalists. You know what I mean? It makes me feel weird. I'm like, either you've got a mental problem, you know, it's almost like a cucking thing, or you're a glowy. You know what I mean? Like, or you're a plant or a subversive or something. It's just weird to me. Like I wouldn't join a Black Power movement. You know what I mean? Because it's weird. Like, why would I hate on my own kind? Like, it's not bad to realize that there's problems within the Black community, but still, it's like, it's, you know what I mean? It's just, you just can't trust them. You can't trust them. But let's take a little look at this video. I love, too, how he says Black conservative versus white racist go to war in intense debate. Like, right there, you're already writing iHypocrite's opinions off by calling him white racist. But they're allowed to do that because as long as you preface it with saying white. By the way, he looks a lot better here. I guess he was wearing like a hoodie when I saw him, but he looks like better here. And Brandon, it said the name of the Black conservative. Surely that's not Brandon Tatum. If that's the case, iHypocrite had a glow up and Brandon had a glow down.
And it's like, none of it is true. You know what I mean? At least with the Carmelo Anthony stuff, none of it's been substantiated. So there's a lot of lying, and it's just kind of this racial tribalism where they come together and defend their own, and white people don't do that, and it's to our detriment. But there's more and more and more white people who are getting fed up. You're going to see the word fatigue a lot in the coming days. People are starting to say, like, we're tired of this, we're tired of like the constant indignities. The murders is a big part because there's a lot of murders that are black on white, and we see those all the time. There's another one this week. This girl Logan Federico, a really beautiful blonde girl killed by just this like soulless black guy who went into her car her house to get her credit cards or whatever. And it hurts and play out the same.
Is he Canadian? Sending the message? That sounded really Canadian. I think he's got to be Canadian.
Way without the Carmelo Anthony thing fresh in people's memory.
No fucking way. Is that Brandon Tatum? That cannot be him. If that's the case, he has gained a ton of weight. That's not him.
Just, not to say that white people don't have some secret affinity.
Oh, look at this Black conservative already. Well, I don't agree. Like, what is there to disagree? And by the way, iHypocrite is not like some insane person. He's like very mild-mannered and says like racist jokes.
For hurling the N-word at people on a playground, but it definitely feels like there's this kind of.
Don't you love how they use? Sorry to keep interrupting. Don't you love how they use the adjectives like hurling and through the N-word? Like they're really trying to imbue the N-word with some sort of a violent connotation. Like it's not just saying a word. Like it's more than that. It's actually like harm or assault. You notice that? Like when they talk about her saying the N-word, they always preface it with like hurling or throwing the N-word.
In white consciousness on race, where there's so many things throughout our, throughout my life.
What a pussy this guy looks like. Look at the Smashing Pumpkins. The fucking arm tattoo, the tattoos on his neck up there near his eye, and look at him slunched over. Like, this nigga is trying so hard to look cool, and he just looks like the weakest little fag I've ever seen.
Where it's like there's tribalism allowed by everybody except for white people. They're just in being white, right? And even you, I think, would acknowledge that, right?
No, I mean, I acknowledge it to a certain extent. I think you're very misinformed. Dylan Roof had people trying to donate to him. Many mass shooters who are white had donations funds started, but white-owned donation vehicles like GoFundMe, GiveSend, and Go shut those down. So look at Shiloh Hendricks, for example, Kyle Rittenhouse, which I think Kyle Rittenhouse didn't do anything wrong, but there was this significant push by non-white people and white people to demonize Rittenhouse. He still was allowed to have a GoFundMe. So I believe white people kind of started that, like, you're going to do something messed up and we're going to throw our financial might behind it. So what you are, you're not even a racist, which that already makes me kind of look at you weird. There's only one race, human beings. You break us down beyond the skin, we're exactly the same. A few fast twitch muscles, slow twitch muscles might be a little different. I don't know. That's arguable. But the thing is, you're really just prejudiced. And you're really you're punching down on black people because you're disillusioned with things that your race has created. Or you're ethnic. That's what you're doing. You're ethnocentric. but we'll just say racist for the sake of this video. Sure. So you're disillusioned with the way your race has manipulated things because it doesn't work in favor of a significant segment of your race. Black people have been throwing your people alley-oops since 500-600 years ago. Literally, the only reason you were able to have slaves, which built this country, and I'm not saying in the fact that we just did the physical labor, but created an economy.
Okay, shut the this fucking argument of slaves and immigrants built the damn country. No, they didn't. Okay, you picked cotton. You were field hands. Okay, you literally did not build the country. Do you think white people would have let you build the cathedral? Do you think black people built those cathedrals that you see? Do you think black people built Harvard? Do you think black people were the architects? No, they weren't. You were picking cotton and maybe picking tobacco, okay? That's all you were doing. You were herding cattle and you were doing the architect. You were doing like what fucking Mexicans do today. They pick blueberries, they pick crops. Is that building the country?
I'm gonna keep killing you niggas. I'm gonna kill you niggas, bro. Nerd. Fucking nerd.
Capability, our intellectual journeys in this country tells